Hello and welcome to Workbooks End User Training. This is part of a series of short tutorials guiding you through the basics of using workbooks. There are lots of different record types in workbooks performing a variety of functions, but there are commonalities across them that we're going to cover in this Introduction to Records tutorial. Let's start with looking at people and organisations, and then later we'll move on to have a look at some transaction records and the difference between them. Here I am in Workbooks, and I'm going to search for a person who I know is on my system called Alan Whitehead. If you haven't already, I would recommend that you watch our tutorial on searching for data. It's worth trying to familiarise yourself with the icons that are used in the top left-hand corner of all records. For people, it's this kind of outline, this jelly baby outline of a person, and you'll see different icons for the different record types. Your record layout might differ from the one I'm showing you on the screen and later records that I show you too, but the behaviours of the fields will be the same. First of all, wherever you see a solid blue line on the left-hand side, there's one here next to name and also one next to assigned to, that means that the field is mandatory or required. If you don't populate mandatory fields, you won't be able to save the record, and you'll see a message like this one. If I take the name out and try to save the record, you'll see you get a little red message saying that the field is required, so we'll put that back in. Notice that when I put a full name in, Workbooks automatically works out what the first name and the last name are based on what you put into this full name field. Lots of fields have down arrows next to them indicating that they are a pick list or a drop down. You might know them by different names. If the arrow has a plus next to it, like this one here next to title, it means it's an unrestricted pick list. That means that if the option you want isn't there within the choice, you can just type it in. So maybe I want to make this person Professor. As it said, it's showing me that no records match my query, but I am able to type that into the field. It doesn't add what I've just typed to the pick list, but it does enable you to populate the field and move on with your record. If you find, though, that you're often having to type in the same missing value, then make sure you speak to your system administrator who can add the option to the pick list for future use for you. If the pick list doesn't have a plus symbol next to it, it's called a restricted pick list, and it means that you'll have to select an option from that list or leave the field empty. Again, you can speak to your system administrator about the kind of values that should be appearing in those drop-down pick lists for you. In the tutorial about searching, we said that a magnifying glass indicates that you can search for data. And the one next to the employer field here, this one, it's what we call a linked field. This means it looks up another record on your system. The employer field, for example, can only be populated with the name of an existing organisation on your database. With phone number fields, this one here for telephone and another one for mobile, if you've linked Workbooks to a VoIP system, then you can use the click to dial functionality. I just used the down arrow next to the little telephone symbol. You can either just call the number, or this second option, call the number and add a phone call activity. So it will actually create an activity record in Workbooks for you of type phone call. Similarly, you can use the drop down next to email fields. If I click on it here, you can send email from Workbooks, which is the bottom option, or you can send with your email client, which for most of you I think will be Outlook. I'm not going to go into the details around that because we do have a tutorial that covers working with emails and workbooks. The tabs that you can see, there are a number of them across the top of this record. You'll see tabs at the top of every record in Workbooks. The exact ones that you've got will differ depending on how your environment has been set up, but the first one will always be a main tab, as you can see here. Tabs are used to link this record that you're looking at to other ones on your system. You'll see that lots of these tabs have numbers in brackets afterwards, and this indicates how many records have been linked to this particular one that you've got open on the screen at the moment. You can create new records or link this one to other records using the tabs. For example, if I open the Activities tab here, we can see that there are 9 rows, i.e. there are 9 activities linked to this particular person. You also have the option here to schedule an activity, which means to set up an activity that's for the future, or to record an activity. For instance, if you've had an incoming phone call, for example, you might want to just make a note of that within Workbooks. So recording an activity is something that's already complete. Again, we've got a tutorial that looks at working with activities, so for more information on that, I'd recommend you watch that particular session. I'm going to return to the main tab now. Hopefully across the top here, the two buttons Save and Close and Save are fairly self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into those. You may or may not see a button that says Merge when in your system. It depends which capabilities you've been given. Merge is there to help you deal with duplicate data on your system, so it's really useful. But if you do have the capability, merging does result in at least one record being deleted. So don't just merge without thinking about the implications of that. Similarly, you might see a little bit further across here there is an actual delete button where I can delete this particular record. All I'm going to say about that is use it with caution. The download button here allows you to download a vCard for the person record, but if you're using our WES functionality, which is all about synchronizing data between Workbooks and Outlook, all the people that are in your My People view will automatically be shared between Workbooks and Outlook. More information about the My View can be found in our Views and Filters tutorial, and you'll get more information about the WES functionality in the email tutorial that I've already mentioned. You'll also find information in that one about the Send Email button that you can see here. The New button, if I just click on it, is a really handy way to create new records linked to this one without having to navigate away from this main tab and open up one of the other tabs to create new records. This Watch button over on the right hand side, if you click on it, which I'll do right now, you can see it changes to say Stop Watching, so it's a toggle on, toggle off kind of functionality. If you click on it, if you watch a record, it means that if that record isn't already assigned to you, the record will appear in your My View. This doesn't just apply to people, but to any kind of record in Workbooks. Views, as I've already mentioned, are covered in a separate tutorial, so it's worth watching that to get a bit more insight into what's going on here. Over towards the top right hand corner of the record, over here, you'll see 4 different buttons. If you click on the first one, the padlock button, and you'll see a padlock button throughout Workbooks, this shows you who's got access to this particular record. And depending on your access permissions, you may or may not be able to change these settings. If I wanted to add a rule, I can say that maybe I want people in the customer services group to be able to read and modify this record. I won't save that. This information icon, as I hover over it, you'll see certain pieces of information. You can see the unique object reference for this record. In this case, it's PERS, PERS-340. You'll also see information on when the record was last updated and by whom. In addition, you'll see the name of the form layout. In Workbooks, it's possible to create more than one different layout for the same record, and if you've been given access to more than one layout, you'll see a button called View. There isn't one on this record, but if you have got different layouts, you'll see this button, and it'll have a drop-down where you can choose to open a different layout. I'll show you that a little later in this tutorial when we're looking at an opportunity record. If instead of just hovering over the information button you actually click on it, you'll see more details about the record, including how it was created. Down at the bottom here it says this person was imported into Workbooks, and you'll also see its unique ID, this number here, 2229. All records in Workbooks are given 2 unique identifiers. The object reference, which we saw earlier, is an alphanumeric string, usually starting with the letters that describe what kind of record it is. For example, organisations start with ORG, opportunities with OPP, and people start with PERS, which we can see up at the top here. The ID is just a unique number. These 2 unique identifiers are very useful if you're building reports or importing data into Workbooks, but that's all covered separately. Notice in addition that you are given a URL here, and it says that you can press Ctrl-C or Command-C to copy this link. The link itself is actually the same as the link up in your browser bar. What it means is that if you want to communicate with a colleague about a specific record, you can send them the URL, and as long as they've got access to the same database as you and have the permissions to access that particular record, they'll be able to open it directly from the URL. If you have the audit license, within this information button you'll see the audit button up here on the top left. This gives much more granular information about what fields have been changed on the record. So for example, this top row here, if I expand it, it shows me that on the 16th of March at 14:43:35, very precise, the user called Workbook Solution Admin changed the value in the telephone field, changed it from this previous number to the new one. So it gives you a lot more information about what's going on in your system. I will close out of those two fields. Returning back up to the buttons towards the top right hand side, you'll see that there is a print button that gives you a printable version of this record if you want it. The final button towards the top right is a little question mark, and you'll see question marks throughout the product. Clicking on them takes you to contextually relevant content on our online knowledge base, which is a great resource to use if you want to know more about all aspects of workbooks. I'll click on that now. And you can see that we've been taken out to information about people. The knowledge base itself is completely searchable, so if you're searching for other things, then just put your search term in here and click the magnifying glass. Often when you see a linked field, like this one here for employer, you'll see an icon next to it that provides a link to that record, this one here. From here I can easily open the Atlantic Computer Services organisation record, which I'll do now. Hopefully you would automatically use the maximize, minimize and close buttons that you see in the very top right hand corner. But in addition you've got this push pin. If you click on it, it changes to pointing downwards, and it means that this record will automatically open when you next log into Workbooks. It will be at the same size and in the same position as it was when you pinned it. If you want to stop pinning it, you just click on it again to stop that happening. And you can pin multiple things to your desktop. It can be a really good way to remind you to check on certain records as soon as you log in. As I mentioned earlier, it's worth trying to become familiar with the icons in the top left-hand corner of records. As you can see over here for the organisation, it's an outline of a building. You saw tabs across the top of Alan Whitehead's record, and there are tabs too across the top of this organisation record. Some of them are the same and some of them are different. Any emails and activities, transaction records and so on that are linked to employees of this company are also rolled up to the organisation level, which gives you a good helicopter view, if you like, of what's going on. For example, if I open the Activities tab, I can see that there's an array of activities linked to Atlantic, some of which are for Alan Whitehead, one of the employees there, and a couple of which are for Gracie Singh. The reason that some of these are highlighted in red, if you're wondering, is because they've got a due date in the past and they're not marked with a status of complete or closed. See, this one says it's underway, but the others all say new, and their date was before today. The Summary tab, which is the second one here, it's kind of a conglomeration of all the activities and transaction records linked to the one that you're looking at. It also shows any related notes or emails, so it provides a really good overview of everything that's gone on in connection with this record, including audited changes. There is a separate tutorial that looks at filtering views, but once you know how to use filters, it means if you wanted to hone in on a particular type of record, you wanted to include or exclude the audited records, for example, you could do that easily. If you look at the People tab, you can see the number 4 in brackets after it, which would suggest that there are 4 employees at Atlantic Computer Services. So let's open up that tab. There are 4 rows of data, but if you look, the bottom 2 are both for somebody called Kate Weller. She appears twice. It's not a duplicate. What's happening is that we can see with this 3rd row that it says that Kate was previously employed by Atlantic Computer Services, whereas the one below it says she is currently employed by Atlantic Computer Services. What that's telling us is that she must have left and come back again. If I use the down arrow next to the relationship, you can see I'm given the option to open that relationship, which I will do. This was the previous employment one. And it says ex-employee, ex-employer. The relationship status itself is closed, and it says that it was valid from March 2017 to May 2019. So that was the period that she was employed from at one point. If I close that down, if I open the same type of record for the next row, it shows that this is an open employee-employer relationship valid from February 2020. So she obviously left and then started working again in February of 2020. In addition, what I can do here is if we get a new employee at Atlantic Computer Services, I could add them here. There is another way to do that, and there's another tutorial about working with people and organisations, so we'll cover that there. But what I did want to highlight was that we've got this concept of adding a third-party relationship. If I click on it, I could say, for example, that Atlantic Computer Services has contracted, and then search for somebody on my database. And if I just click on Add the Relationship, it shows now 5 rows of data saying that John Cheney is a contractor to Atlantic Computer Services, albeit that his job title is Director and his employer is Workbooks. Similarly, if I open the Organisations tab, I could add a relationship here, a third-party relationship, to another organisation if appropriate. So I could, for instance, say that Atlantic is a partner of, and pick another organisation, 3BT will do for my purposes here, and add the relationship. This functionality, this ability to create relationships between what we call parties, people and people, organisations and organisations, or people and organisations, it allows you to build up a much richer picture of the world in which you're operating, and knowledge about these interrelationships can really help you to leverage sales. Let's look at transactions now. There are several different types of records in workbooks that we term as transactions, and these include the ones on the screen now, shown in red. There are opportunities, quotations, orders and invoices, as well as credit notes, supplier orders and contracts. They all share some similarities, so let's have a look at one within workbooks. Here we are back in workbooks. We are still on the Atlantic Computer Services organisation record. If you look at the Opportunities tab, there's a number 13 in brackets, and I'll open up that tab. We can see here that we've got 13 rows of data showing that we've had 13 opportunities to date with Atlantic Computer Services. Some of them have been won, some of them have been qualified out, others aren't even qualified yet. I will open this top one. So although we are seeing different fields on an opportunity record from those that we saw on people and organisations, the functionality of the different types of data are similar. You can see we've still got mandatory fields that are shown with the solid blue line on the left hand side. We've got a couple of linked fields, this one for prospective customer. There's a magnifying glass next to it, so we know that we can link through to an organisation on the system. And this one for primary contact, albeit that it hasn't got any information in it at the moment. If I search for Alan Whitehead, I could make him the primary contact for this particular opportunity. There are also what we call restricted pick lists for the stage that this particular deal has achieved, the probability, and so on. I mentioned earlier that if you see a View button towards the top right hand corner of a record, and there is one here on an opportunity, that it will allow you to change the layout of this particular record. I'm just going to click Save first of all because I added a primary contact, so I've already changed the record. But now if I go to the View button, you can see I've got two options, one that's got what we call a balanced layout and one that's a standard layout. Don't worry about the layouts, particularly for the purposes of what I'm showing you. But the top one has a little grey dot to it, that next to it. That means that that's the layout that we're looking at on the screen at the moment. If I click the bottom one, it'll reload with a very slightly different layout. It's not hugely different on this particular database. About halfway down the screen here, these read-only fields show us the total sales and cost values of this particular deal. These figures are made up of the totals on the line items. If I scroll down further, you'll see we've got a couple of what we call line items here. All transaction records have the concept of having one header, which can then be linked to multiple line items. And the line items themselves link to products on your product list. So if I were to click to add a line item, and if I search for something that starts with VoIP, maybe a VoIP server, it's pulling through information that's stored elsewhere on the system, so the line description is filled in for me, Doesn't know the quantity I'm selling, but it pulls through the unit price. Let's say that we want 2 of those rather than 1. And if I click Update and click Save, that has now changed the figures in that analysis that we looked at briefly earlier. It did say, I think, 6,850, and now it's gone up by 10,000 because we've added a couple of servers. You've still got the tabs across the top that link to other record types, as well as the Send Email button. And the New button, you've already seen that as well, because you can add on activities and notes and so on that are linked to this particular record. In addition, on a transaction record, you will see this button called Copy Document. If I click on it, you can see the options that I can select from to copy this particular opportunity into another record type. I'm going to choose Customer Quotation, and a screen comes up asking me if I want to copy all of the linked activities and people and so on, and all of the line items through to the new destination record, if you like. And so I'm going to say yes, I do. I'll copy all of those. And so although it looks similar, what we've got on the screen now is a quotation record. If you look at the icon in the top left-hand corner, it's slightly different. The opportunity one was a funnel. This one is a kind of torn image of an accounting document, really, with line items on it. If I scroll down, I can see the line items that were on the opportunity. Remember, I added 2 servers, so they're represented here on this quotation. And if you look at the Transactions tab, I'll open that up. The record I copied, which was an opportunity, is linked to this destination, this quotation record. When I go back to the main tab, there is a concept on transaction records. On all transaction records apart from opportunities, we have the concept of having a draft or posted status. You can see it here. You can't manually change this. Workbooks changes it for you. Items that have a draft status can be edited, but once they've been posted, you have to have special capabilities in order to amend them. To mark this as posted, there's a button here called Complete, and if I just use Complete and Save rather than closing the record, it reminds me that once I've posted it, unless I've got those special capabilities I mentioned, I won't be able to change it, but I'm going to say yes, that's fine, I want to go ahead. So now we've got a posted quotation, and in addition you might notice that a new button has appeared. It's the Generate PDF button. Once a record is posted, you'll see that button, and it allows you to create a printable PDF of the record, or you can use the Send Email button and attach a copy of that PDF and send it to the customer. So that's an introduction to people, organisations, and an overview of transaction records on Workbooks. Thank you for watching this tutorial, which I hope you found useful. For more information, remember to visit our knowledge base, which you can find at www.workbooks.com/knowledge_base. Thanks, bye bye.